Between open borders and airlifts, the more free stuff they get, the more freedoms you're going to lose. Wilkow starts now. Welcome to the program. I'm Andrew Wilkow. The 20th remembrance of 9/11 has come and gone. Terrorism, even though the Biden administration and the media would have you think that conservatives and Republicans are the greatest threat, terrorism, foreign-born terrorism, is still a threat to our freedoms. See, it forces us to draw a new balance between liberty and security. And unfortunately, there are people in government who use every opportunity and every excuse to increase the power of the government under the guise of security at the expense of liberty. The disaster of the Afghanistan withdrawal is now providing the left with a new weapon against freedom in the United States. What? Oh, you thought the left, the Democrats, would be in full political retreat after the absolute failure of the Biden administration? You really thought that they would give up their plans for a reboot of our economy and society? Please. The Democrats are committed to changing the demographics of this country by any means necessary, and they see unending migration from the third world as the best weapon. Doesn't matter if it's at the southern border or airlifts out of Afghanistan. Mass migration is the key to all of their future plans. The more people they bring in, the more people the government has to take care of. The more people the government has to take care of, the more the government needs to spend on government-run programs for housing and health care, education, caste assistance, all of it. The best part is that you will have to pay higher taxes to cover all these costs. We are now seeing the full picture of America Last. Remember when President Biden promised no Americans would be left behind?
So Americans should understand that troops might have to be there beyond August 31st.
No, Americans should understand that we're going to try to get it done before August 31st.
But if we don't, the troops will stay.
If we don't, we'll determine at the time who's left.
And
if there are American forces, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
Not really. Fellow Americans have been cut off from escape from the Taliban and ISIS-K. And even the left-wing media can't deny it.
There's no possible way at this stage that the U.S. is going to get everyone out who wants to leave or who may have changed their mind and has decided that they now want to go and don't want to ride it out with the Taliban.
American lives are in the hands of animals who think nothing of torturing and killing other Afghan Muslim men. Just ask yourself, what do you think they'll do to an American woman?
Mr. President, if Americans are still in Afghanistan after this time, what would you do? Thank you, guys. Let's go. Sir, what would we do if Americans are still there after the deadline?
That's the guy in charge, by the way. But the Democrats see a huge opportunity here, a big win. I know, you're skeptical, right? Well, let me explain. Unvaccinated and unvetted Afghans are being shuttled all over our country while you're being told to prepare for another round of COVID lockdowns. As I stand before you, there are untold number of Americans trapped in a country now run by cave-dwelling savages, while random Afghans are already settling into new lives right here in the United States at your expense. The left is running the same playbook that they're using at the border. Non-citizens are being ushered in, and citizens are being told to shut up and obey. Look, everything's going wrong right now. Gas prices are out of control, so is inflation and the debt. The left wants to coerce you into government-regulated housing, onto government-run transport, and to leave you no choice but the indoctrination mills of government-run schools. And now, you may actually have to start showing a COVID passport to move about this country. While this is happening, Look at this. 6 days after the fall of Afghanistan, tens of thousands of refugees fleeing the Taliban are beginning to make their way towards new lives in American cities, including St. Louis. Local officials say more than 1,000 Afghans could eventually arrive here, and already leaders are talking about the repeat of the Bosnian immigration that saw thousands move here, fill jobs, start businesses, and revitalize city neighborhoods. Okay, according to that article, you just heard it, they landed in St. Louis 6 days after the airlifts began. You're supposed to, in the chaos of the Taliban takeover, you're supposed to believe that the Biden administration has fully vetted all of these people. Are they all vaccinated? Who cares? Along with Democrats in Congress, Democrat governors want in on the action as well. Locking down citizens, no problem. Destroying jobs and businesses, par for the course. Making kids wear masks, do it or else. But when it comes to foreigners, it's always warm hugs and embraces. Headline, California Democrats urge Biden, send us Afghan evacuees. More than half of the Democrats in California's 53-member congressional delegation will send a letter to President Biden on Thursday saying that California is ready and eager to house Afghan refugees and special immigrant visa applicants. Governor Gavin Newsom has announced his commitment to embrace refugees suffering through horrific events in Afghanistan, declaring California a state of refuge. We support this stance unequivocally, the House members say in the letter, which will be released later Thursday. Other states, including Utah, have made similar public appeals. From the left coast to the east coast, it's the same story. Headline, Afghan evacuees arrive at Philly airport. Area officials promise a safe haven. Resettling newcomers is likely to be difficult and at least very complicated, but Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf and New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy pledged support for the Philadelphia arrivals. Murphy announced an Afghan refugee assistance task force consisting of representatives of law enforcement and other state agencies. U.S. citizens or those with valid visas will be free to go where they choose, but otherwise the evacuees will be taken eventually to Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. Typically, the newcomers will get food, water, medical care, and a cot. So let me get this straight. In New Jersey, where I live, you can be arrested for violating an executive order, but if you just got here, they'll dip right into taxpayer money to create a task force to settle you in. All of this should amount to massive losses by Democrats in the 2022 midterms, right? Now, maybe. But the academic left plays the long game. The left, with the help of the media, is going to turn the absolute disaster in Afghanistan, the withdrawal, to their advantage. You are going to see them run, again, the basic playbook they are running at the border. First, there has to be a crisis, right? Crisis. What the crisis is irrelevant. Crisis is now just a buzzword that begets government action. It doesn't really matter where the crisis is. If there is a crisis, our government is going to act. It's going to create new restrictions and new spending. People fleeing poverty and violence, COVID, whatever. The next thing that happens, the lines are blurred and terms are redefined. Follow the science became do as you're told. Illegal immigrants became just immigrants, and illegal border crossings became migration. The handful of fully vetted Afghan allies has now morphed into vulnerable Afghans. There are like 38 million people living in Afghanistan, or 37 million of them, 37,500,000 now vulnerable. Well, yeah, see how that works? The Democrats never pass up an opportunity to bring people in they think can be used to reshape America. So when there's talk of going back in, how many random Afghans are we going to pull out?
And in order to make good on the role that we have played in this violence, we have a responsibility to make a home for the people whose lives have been upended by interventionist U.S. foreign policy. Yeah. And so as a result, I'm proud to have co-led a letter with Representative Barbara Lee to ask and urge the Biden administration to as they set their refugee quotas, to make it no less than 200,000 in the upcoming year.
Absolutely. I mean, we've heard that it could be 200,000 or 300,000 people that helped us over the course of 20 long years that we were there.
200,000, 300,000. So the baseline from AOC is 200,000. Point of reference, we're averaging about 200,000 illegal border crossings per month. So 200,000 individuals, will they be single and then able to sponsor a family member who then gets to come here and sponsor more family members? I mean, that 200,000 will be a million like that. So let's back up a bit. No sooner than people hanging on to C-17s did the Democrats and the media lay out their political messaging battle plans. Don't you dare question any of this, or, you guessed it, you're a racist. Let's start with the absolute moral authority on this. Of course, cue up Representative Ilhan Omar.
I'm just going to preface this by saying none of this is surprising, that the people on the right who were just like 24 hours ago pretending to care about the Afghans, people, suddenly are like, yeah, but don't send any of them over here. But I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it is not surprising, right? This is their playbook. They know how to whip up their base into frenzy. They're trying to find something that sticks so that they can try to put the president in bad lighting and sort of come after Democrats. We've seen the former president, the man who literally banned Muslims from coming to this country, say we should allow for Afghan refugees to come to the United States. You have the man who led us into this war, President Bush, say we should allow for Afghani refugees. And then you've got these crazy people on the right doing, what they always do with their fear-mongering and their hateful rhetoric.
Okay, so you're a racist, right? That doesn't really matter that there was no Muslim ban under Trump, but notice they did it right there. They blurred the line between vetted and trusted allies to basically all who want out. But for the record, I did cover the issue of so-called trusted Afghans turning on our troops way back in 2013. Welcome back to the program. I want to bring up a topic that we don't hear too much about, green on blue violence, which is also referred to as insider attacks. This is the term used to describe killing a Western troop by members of the Afghani security services, like the military police or the local police or whatever. On Monday, there was another incident where 2 U.S. troops were killed after an Afghani police officer opened fire. This is just the latest example of what's becoming a major problem for the safety of our troops overseas, and for some reason it keeps getting worse. Now, last year, there were 47 of these attacks on our soldiers. That's more than double the amount in 2011. And so far, 3 deaths have taken place this year. So it's real. Next up is the social media push. Here comes Representative Barbara Lee. There's no military solution in Afghanistan. Every resource we have must be allocated to getting people out safely. That means issuing visas and accepting refugees with open arms. That's right. Every resource. Get them out. Get them all out. Here's a little stat on homelessness amongst Americans in our country. Zoom in on that. We have almost 600,000 American citizens out on the streets every day. A problem we have been unable to solve. Yet, somehow, we managed to have unlimited resources for refugees. We have free money, free housing, free health care, and education. Like I always say, every issue we discuss here has to include the open border. So let's take a look at this from the Texas Tribune. U.S.-Mexico border apprehensions for the fiscal year surpassed 1 million in June. Quote, border apprehensions have risen every month since President Biden took office, presenting political and logistical concerns for the new administration, as Democrats seek to pass legislation that would allow 11 million undocumented immigrants already living in the United States to apply for citizenship. You know, that 11 million number is a joke. I mean, they've been saying 11 to 20 million people for over 20 years. Again, that's America last. That's costing us a few coins. It's not enough that we first started airlifting out random unvetted Afghans instead of Americans. Then we gave the Taliban a literal kill list from Politico. U.S. officials in Kabul gave the Taliban a list of names of American citizens, green card holders, and Afghan allies to grant them entry into the militant-controlled outer perimeter of the city's airport, a choice that's prompted outrage behind the scenes from lawmakers and military officials. So here's the argument. America Last is in full effect. You cannot bring all that is there to here without here becoming there. I say that over and over. It's bad enough, tragic actually, it's bad enough that the Biden administration, the Afghan withdrawal, has turned into such a devastating debacle of epic proportions. Now the Democrats want to make it 1,000 times worse. You know, Jimmy Carter, if I could do my best Casey Kasem, Jimmy Carter slips to number 2 on the list of presidents who failed to bring hostages home. Right now, the left is turning this unmitigated disaster of the withdrawal into yet another opportunity to flood our country with people from the third world, and they are going to use the exact playbook they're using on the border. I can't say that enough. And they're going to make you pay for it. I can't say that enough. Whether with taxes or loss of freedom or both. But people are fleeing poverty and violence. And if you don't want an endless stream of people coming here at taxpayer expense, you're a racist. There'll be endless talk about women and girls, but almost no talk about radical Islam. Just like there's little talk of failed socialist policies in Central and South America. None of that matters. As it stands, we are averaging about 200,000 people crossing the border illegally per month. It's pretty basic. The United States cannot be expected to absorb millions and millions of people when we have major problems of our own. There is nothing in the Constitution that orders or even allows the federal government to raise the tax on we the people for the explicit purpose of spending on the non-citizen absent of a treaty. The non-citizen, if we're being totally honest, has been placed above the citizen. That's you and me. Yet again, we have left behind Americans to favor Afghans. From COVID to the border to Afghanistan, the Democrats, or what's the immortal saying? Never let a crisis go to waste. And they aren't. Every crisis is being used as a weapon against you to advance the plans of the left. And just what do our overlords have to say about all of this?
Mr. Secretary, this administration break its word that no American would be left behind.
Okay, joining us now to discuss our border crises, both at the southern border with Mexico and U.S. Customs and Immigration all over the world right now, quite frankly, but especially for refugees from Afghanistan. We're going to bring in Mark Morgan. He served in the Trump administration as acting Customs Border Patrol Commissioner and is now a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
All right, I just got to ask, how long does it take, whether at the southern border or anywhere else for that matter, how long does it take to actually vet somebody who shows up at a port of entry?
You know, I tell you, a lot longer right now than they're using. It depends on what category you're in, what country you're coming from. There's a lot of circumstances that play into this. But I'll give you an example right now because, you know, Afghanistan obviously is a front and center. The SIVs that we've heard a lot about, the special immigrant visa, for those who truly risk their lives to help American forces in Afghanistan, that process it can take well over a year to be able to properly vet somebody. And now what we're seeing that being done is literally in days, if not at all completed, before we're allowing these individuals into the United States. They've absolutely supplanted speed for substance in this case.
I have been reading articles, and I used some in the monologue, that 6 days. It was 6 days after the airlifts began that evacuees, aka vulnerable Afghans, they keep changing the terminology here, right? There's a huge difference between people that put their lives and their families' lives on the line to work with our military, where there are units and unit commanders. I know that person. I know them personally. And then people that just crowded on the C-17s. It was 6 days from airlift to touchdown in St. Louis, and I believe in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, where people were already on the ground here. And they're already being offered housing, education, job placement assistance. I can't believe for a second that the Biden administration fully vetted these people. And question, are they vaccinated?
Yeah, and look, what you just described, your listeners need to pay very, very close attention to, because you summarize one of the most important elements is who's actually coming. The majority of individuals, one, that were evacuated from Afghanistan, and the majority of individuals making it to the U.S. are not those SIV applicants that we talked about, that they're not the individuals who risk their lives to truly help American forces in Afghanistan. That's not who they are. They're just general refugees that want to flee Afghanistan. I get it. I understand that. But first of all, there's a couple of things. That should not be a U.S.-only issue. Look, refugee resettlement should really be, first and foremost, the countries in the UAE. And second of all, look, once they have been evacuated from Afghanistan, their immediate danger is over. Let's slow down. Let's temper our compassion and our moral obligation to help those that helped us. Let's slow that down and temper that with common sense and a robust vetting process. Get them to a third country, slow it down, keep them there, make sure completely vetted before they set foot in American soil. That's not what's being done. And it's even worse than that. The individuals now, DHS Secretary Mayorkas, he has the authority. He's actually given them parole status. So that means actually when they set foot, as they're still going through the vetting process, he actually gives them legal status so they can get driver's licenses and jobs and et cetera, as you described. It's absolutely absurd.
We've got members of Congress who have military installations in their districts. I mean, Representative Mark Green says he's got a source at Fort Pickett that says they've already let some of these people just leave, just go. I mean, we've been doing, it seems like the same playbook at the border. People show up, the Border Patrol is overwhelmed, right? They have a hard line for how long they can hold on to families and children. They then turn these people over to, I guess, third-party organizations and charities. They get on buses, they get on planes, and they disappear into the dead of night. Oh, but they have court dates, like they ever show up. But now we're doing that with Afghans who we don't even, again, if you told me if you told me a commander, a soldier, an airman, a Marine, a Navy SEAL said, I served with this guy 3 years, I know him, I know his family. That's one thing. Yes, they should still be vetted. But when people are just piling on to air and leaving Americans behind, let's not forget that. Yeah. We have Americans who are left behind. These people are coming here and they're going where I don't know and doing what we don't know. That's kind of scary. And this is being all done by design, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And look, what's very important to add on to that, look, it's both catastrophic what we're doing right now with respect to the lack of vetting for Afghans, as well as our southern border. The southern border, we're allowing people in, too, that have not been properly vetted, as you just described. But here, when we're talking about Afghanistan, what makes this unique is this is a terrorist base of operations. This isn't Haiti, where they just suffered a hurricane or an earthquake. This is a terrorist base of operations, a country that facilitated and influenced 9/11. That's a new playbook. It's a new set of concerns. That's not hyperbole. Look, the Secretary of State just recently acknowledged this past week that, yes, the individuals boarding plane in Afghanistan, it was all about speed. He admitted that properly vetting wasn't being done, but yet they're not doing anything to slow that down. Look, my concern is right now, we've already heard reports that hundreds of individuals boarded planes from Afghanistan that were on the no-fly list. We had an individual that actually made it to Germany that had explosive components in his luggage. We had a known rapist, convicted rapist, that made it to Dulles. That's who we know. And when they keep saying that they have these robust databases and they're checking, look, Andrew, this is common sense. That's for people that actually are in that database. What happens if they have somebody that's a terrorist sympathizer that has not made it to our database, that forged documents that are pretty easy to do, and they made their way on board evac plane out of Afghanistan, and now they're in the United States? That's not hyperbole. Now, look, I'm not saying that a terrorist attack is imminent. What I'm saying is this is unconscionable, and why are we putting America last and everybody first again when we don't have to? We can temper that. We can slow this down, do vetting in a third country before they come to the United States, but that's not what's being done.
The point here, and one of the points I want to make, and I made it in the monologue, I flew here from New Jersey. I had to wait in a line, take my belt off, take my shoes off, separate my laptop, right, empty my pockets, you just pointed something out that's being largely ignored. Somehow, that guy got on a plane, a military aircraft with bomb-making materials. I can't even get on an airplane with a big bottle of water. I think they've loosened the bottle of water thing. But what I'm getting at here is that if we're bringing in people who may be dangerous, the government's going to say, well, now we've got to increase surveillance. There might be a terrorist threat on top of all this domestic terrorism stuff. It seems like we're being told that we're going to have to ever more trade our liberty for security. That if the border remains open, if people are crossing, if they're not vaccinated, well, we're going to have another round of COVID lockdowns. Oops, it's the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Well, you're letting people who are unvaccinated. When we start talking about COVID passports, right? You might have to show a card to go about your daily lives, but people are coming in here without any cards. I mean, this is the big conversation that's not being had, is that we are being told that we should be silent and be still and be quiet as they reconfigure our freedoms and liberties in this country. At the same time, people are pouring in, and that's part of the justification. I'm sorry, I'm a sympathetic person. We should get out the allies. We should allow legal immigration, but not at the expense of our freedoms.
I couldn't agree more, Andrew. And look, not only the expense of our freedom, but our safety and security as well. Look, there have been numerous, quote, even the SIVs, the individuals that supposedly started out to help American forces, actually turned out to be traitors and actually put American forces in harm's way that resulted in American soldiers actually dying. That's why it's so important we vet. Look, the SIV application process itself has been riddled with fraudulent applications. The first 3 months of this fiscal year, even the SIVs, a good majority of them were actually denied because of fraudulent applications. Look, I could go on and on here. That's why the vetting should be done outside of the United States. This secretary should be able to stand up and tell American people that he guarantees that the vetting process is 100% foolproof and that we are going to go with an abundance of caution. And if we can't absolutely vet somebody and verify that they cannot do or pose potential harm to the United States, if they're not coming in, that's not what's happened. They're dumping it in to address the political optics of a failed evacuation, to say, look what we've done, look how compassionate we are. Meanwhile, we're putting our national security and our safety in jeopardy. And the same thing is being done at our southern border. And look, I know we're running out of time, but real quick here, right now, the southern border is also, it's not just they've jeopardized every aspect of our public health and our public safety with an open border, but it's a national security issue as well, Andrew. Look, right now, look, they can do all the rhetoric of saying this organization, terrorist organization, doesn't get along with this one. Here's what they have in common: their hatred for the United States and their unwavering commitment to continue to do us harm and look for vulnerabilities. And right now, one of the largest vulnerabilities this country has is our southwest border.
I see that Marine Corps pin you have on your lapel there. I don't get how Biden is running things. We lost 13 service members, not in the fight, but manning a post. I mean, we have about 90 seconds. I mean, this is not hard. Biden could have easily said, look, here, if there was going to be a deadline, if there was going to be a withdrawal, let's start getting those people out now. Let's start vetting them now. Let's start making, safe third country appointments for them now. It was just kind of like, okay, we're done. We're pulling out. Here's the last guy that's leaving. And oh, by the way, there's $83 billion worth of our equipment sitting there. I think this is going to have ramifications for our freedoms going forward, because now the government has to, tax us to spend on them, has to consider the security risks, which when they put new measures in place, we have to abide by. This is going to refigure the relationship between citizen and government unless we get new leadership and they say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to finally secure that border, and we're not just going to bring in unvetted people. 30 seconds. Go ahead. Let's finish this.
Yeah, I tell you, first of all, thanks for those pen. As a Marine myself, the day they died, I put this pen on my lapel, and it's going to stay there. And I think you're right. This is about Biden. I'm not going to second guess the military leaders and those military forces that are on the ground, on the front lines in the heat of the battle. I do question this administration's orders that they're telling them to carry out. And I do believe that's what resulted in the deaths of our soldiers. And I do believe it could have been prevented.
It's just, yeah, it seems like, I mean, you have to fail this bad, you almost have to want to. I mean, you almost have to want to, but I do have to leave it there. Mark Morgan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew.
On a side note, we've talked a lot lately about the Democrats' failing public policies and rising inflation. Nowhere else is this more evident than in the meat section of your grocery store. Biden's National Economic Council Director Brian Deese has made some comments on rising food prices.
One of the interesting findings of the report that we put out today is that about half of the overall increase in grocery prices can be attributed to a significant increase in prices in three products, in beef, in pork, and in poultry. And in beef and in pork, we've seen double-digit increases in prices over the last couple of months. In fact, if you look at the category that is grocery prices, what economists call food at home, so food that is being purchased to eat at home, in a number of areas we've seen, if you take out those three categories, we've actually seen price increases that are more in line with historical norms. And we've seen some categories, for example, fresh fruits and vegetables prices have actually declined since the end of last year.
You know, this guy comes straight out of BlackRock, right? So, yeah, if we just ignore the price increases in the stuff that 95% of the population eats every day, it doesn't sound so bad, right? I mean, fuel price increases, water restrictions, farming regulations. Don't look at that stuff. That'd be like saying, okay, well, the sun shines down for free. So if we just ignore the price of oil, gasoline, natural gas, and coal, we could say that energy is technically free, right? All right, our next guest is a great guy to talk to, and he's in the studio with me because actually his studio's right across from mine. And of course, you know him as the host of the Chad Prather Show right here on BlazeTV. Chad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man. It's always funny when I come in this room because you have Ali Stuckey over there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the holy spot. And then there's me and you. Like, I have a corner, you have a corner. And you come over here, you feel a little bit dirty.
It's kind of like a marriage. She gets the bigger closet, right?
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about Larry Elder. He didn't pull it off. I think no matter what happens going forward with Larry Elder, we are going to remember the monkey mask. I mean, you know, if you're a conservative, no matter what you say or do, you're branded a racist, right? And the last time I checked, the standard outside of the N-word was any reference to black people and monkeys. And you literally had this leftist woman in a monkey mask assaulting a black man running for office. If that doesn't leave a mark, I don't know what should.
Right. If you go back and you look at the 1960s, of course, there's the iconic images of people shouting the racial epithets at the black girl who's walking to school. You know, when they're bringing, you know, getting rid of segregation, and this is going to be, I think, it should be one of those iconic images because it's the same concept, right? It's the same thing. This is something that never changes. It changes. It's the message of hate. But unfortunately, we live in a day and age where this kind of behavior on the part of the left is excused. They don't look at that the same way. We've had this conversation over and over again where we've said if a conservative had done that to a black Democrat or a black liberal, it would be all over the news. It would be headlines everywhere.
The whole
front
of the
page.
Republican Party, the whole
everybody,
movement,
right? It's just like, you know, a bunch of idiots go into the Capitol building and now we're all insurrectionists. So the narrative would be that we're all monkey mask wearers. I mean, you can almost go with that. You can almost see the hashtags at this point in time. But this will be swept under the rug, just like everything else is swept under the rug. Something that should be an iconic image that says nothing changes. I mean, from the 60s to the 21st century, nothing has changed.
I bet there are some Democrats that were like, what the hell was that girl thinking?
Yeah.
Right? But we didn't support Larry Elder because of his race. We supported him because he's a conservative. And when you know what? When he saw that, I mean, think about this for a second. He comes from Boys in the Hood, right? He comes from the neighborhood that's depicted in the movie Boys in the Hood and NWA lyrics. That's where that man is from. To think that his evolution or growth into a conservative isn't predicated on what he saw and what he was raised with, and solutions to problems he thinks can be solved with conservative thinking and policymaking. Conservatives support him because he's a genuine article. It's not simply, well, he's the black guy, let's vote for him. That's how we got Obama. But they can't see it that way. They are so enraged that he is popular and making a voice for himself and is going to affect politics for quite some time. I don't know. I think that's, you're running for office. You're running for office. I mean,
I need someone in a monkey mask to assault me at this point in time. Like you can't buy that PR, right? Here's the thing.
He's been accused of that too, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of things. You know, I'm the white heterosexual Christian toxic male in a cowboy hat, right? That I'm the easy redneck to make fun of, which they're going to do that.
Well, for the record, hold on, put me back, just right here. He's not wearing any shoes.
I'm not wearing shoes.
If you need to know that, like he came in here in flip-flops. Don't shoot my feet. But all right, we kind of let that one out.
I'm a free spirit. It is what it is. It was a long night, Andrew.
You're a walking Jimmy Buffett song.
Let me tell you, minus the money. Here's the thing, like I like Larry. Larry's a friend. I like Larry. Like when I look at Larry and I look at his social media, his messages and the way he's packaged that, the thing that crosses my mind isn't that he's a black man. It's like the dude does social media videos in a bathrobe. I'm like, I do social media videos in the cab of my truck with the dog in the backseat. And I'm looking at it going, well, that's a way to go. I mean, like that's a thing to build on, right? It doesn't cross my mind his race or anything else. And I like what he says. He's got a great message.
I think it's not, the Democrats keep talking about racism in the conservative movement. It's they're obsessed. Yeah. You know, and we just look at him and say, he's a man, I agree with him. That's about it.
Hey, what I've always said, especially since so the terms became we were insurrectionists, we've been racists, we've been Nazis, we've been supremacists, we've been all these things. If you are any one of those things, the people closest to you would say, yeah, he probably is a racist. Like I've heard him make jokes at the ball game. I've heard the things that he said. I've heard how he treats people. That kind of thing. By and large, if you got to keep talking about it, like you're going to keep bringing it up, probably the target is on you. You're the one who has the issue. If you're going to keep calling people, usually you're revealing what's going on in your own heart.
Let's talk about the Texas heartbeat bill. You have just fire raining down on this state. What I've been saying in my radio show is, isn't it funny when their language comes back to haunt them? Well, there's no ban on abortion, just reasonable restrictions, right?
Right.
You know, nobody needs an AR-15 to go deer hunting. You don't need a 30 round. We're not trying to outlaw the Second Amendment. We're just trying to put reasonable restrictions on it. Now, the difference between Roe v. Wade and the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment's in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Roe v. Wade is judge-created law, which runs afoul of Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution. Only Congress can make these laws. The states under the 10th Amendment can say, okay, well, there's not really a law here. Now, it says we can't ban abortions. We're not doing that. But like Kristi Noem in South Dakota, we're putting state-based reasonable restrictions.
Yeah. Me personally, my conviction, I believe life begins at conception. So therefore, if you replace the word abortion with murder, or infanticide, it becomes a different thing. So for me personally, I want it to be as hard as it can possibly be for a person to get an abortion, right? If you say, well, they're going to be back alley abortions. Okay, again, replace that word with murder. What do we want to do? We want to have sterile, clean places for you to commit murder. That's my conviction on that. So to the degree that we can make this as hard as possible to end an innocent human life, which is what an unborn baby is, we should do that. If you want to boycott Texas, then boycott Texas, right? I don't really want to go to Portland, Oregon. They don't want Texans to come to, they're shutting it down. They said no Texans are allowed. We're not going to go invade.
Well,
we never at any point in time thought, well, we're missing something in Portland.
Well, you heard Democrats leading up to this, right? Okay, well, all your businesses are coming here, so you're already not doing business, right? Like your businesses are leaving for Texas. We'll see if these big businesses really want to pick up and leave a no-tax, thriving state,
right?
Because there's a sensible, reasonable restriction.
There's a reason why pro athletes that play for teams in other states still live in Texas, because they don't have a state income tax. This is a great place to do business. This is a great place to live. Emphasis on the word live, right? We're giving people the right to live. And I don't like the narrative, or the wording at least, that Greg Abbott, the governor here in Texas, came out with the other day, talking, when he was addressing the issue of rape and incest. He said, well, you still got a chance, right? I mean, that was basically limit some of it. I don't think there's any reason, ultimately, to devalue human life, right? So I'm okay with that. If you want to hate me for trying to speak out for the innocent, then hate me for that. I think that's a pretty good calling card.
I mean, we've already run afoul of everyone on the left. We're two white guys talking about racial issues in California's recall election and abortion. I mean, two men, two white
exactly,
men talking about
that
abortion.
Are man-spreading and mansplaining. Everywhere I go when I'm talking to people, I say, look, you're already going to be a racist. You're already going to be a supremacist. You're already filled with hate. Just take the label and believe your convictions and keep preaching what you believe.
We've learned, and I say this a lot, it doesn't matter how you live your life. Right? You can live your life, looking the way that we do, treating everybody with respect, everybody equally, and unless you virtue signal left, they hate your guts. I would have gotten into Fauci. We only got about 30 seconds left. We'll have to do that when I make my next trip down here. I mean, my God, 900 pages proving this man is a total liar.
Completely.
And that DeSantis and that Florida and Texas got it right when New York and California got it wrong. I mean, our media is a complete shame right now.
The fact that we wanted to believe what Fauci was spewing, people have been eating weird stuff throughout history, from Lagos to Louisiana, right? I mean, and suddenly we're going to talk about eating bats, but they never weaponized crawfish. Okay, so they wanted us to believe that. That's what happened with bats and eating soup, and we know that Fauci was. He knew the thing was funded. He knew it was created. He knew the guy's a liar.
You have to do a show in New Jersey.
Okay.
All right, we'll do that next time. All right, here we go. Time now for parting shots. And today's parting shot is at the Australian government. Not only are they putting the military on the streets and insisting on keeping citizens locked down, but according to the West Australian, citizens are now being limited to the purchase of 6 beers per day. Beer rations. Okay, I thought, and maybe it's something that we do here, when we think of Australian beer, we think of those giant oil can size Foster's and other Australian brands. I mean, apparently they like to drink down under. But why does this surprise anyone? You have to understand, just because we have a cultural exchange with Australia, we love AC/DC, we love Olivia Newton-John, we love those things that come from down under, Crocodile Dundee movies and Men at Work, or any other joke or stereotype I could throw at this, doesn't mean we're governed the same. We might have a similar shared history, but let's be perfectly honest about Australia. They started as a prison colony, and it doesn't look like they got much further. We're right. They're wrong. That's the end of the story. The arguments on this television program cannot be broken. Make sure you catch me on Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125, noon to 3 East, 9 to noon West. From Dallas, Texas, not Australia. I'm Andrew Wilkow. Thank you for watching Blaze TV.